I find it distasteful when somebody says, man, I've done 1,000 deals. I'm like, what's those addresses? I was like, I know you haven't done it that. Like, you personally have done 1,000, or you got a team. That's different. Anyway, so Karen right here, she called me up, and literally her name was Karen. I know some of you are like, Karen, really? Yeah, what was her name. And she calls me up. She had this 9-acre parcel, right? I'm going to share with you the short story of this. She had a 9-acre parcel. And on this 9-acre parcel, she said, hey, I want to sell the property. Now, mind me, when she called me, this is after I've already finished 60 transactions. I do creative deals. I do all kinds of different deals, but 60 face-to-face transactions completed, okay? Over 100 face-to-face. But I am like I'm trained, right? Like I am the special forces of my field as what I call a true investor. To me, a true investor is somebody who's literally in the field doing deals face to face, knocking things out, and I was polished. I'm ready now to transition. Now, again, I never marketed for a big development deal or a 9-acre parcel. This came to me. Before I even met with her, I said, hey, do you really want to sell the property? She said $650,000. She told me right off the rip, hey, I'm willing to hold a note. I was like, all right, cool. Right off the rip, I already know she's down for a creative deal. But I got to make sure does the numbers even work? I don't even know. All I know, it's in a pretty good area. Right when I turn the corner, I see this new Walmart. Later on, I learned these new words in development. Just FYI, like if you transition to development, you start learning like a new language. It's kind of like learning Chinese. You don't even know what some of these damn words mean, but they mean something, right? So if you have a big box store next to something that you're doing, that's called an anchor store. It's actually like Walmart or Starbucks or Target or whatever. That means it's a great national brand that has planted itself in that location, meaning everything else in that location is going to start doing extremely well if it hasn't already. Because they do their research, just like every Publix supermarket, they only open if there's 5,000 people that live in that location. So that's their radius. Every 5,000 people, Publix store. Every 5,000 people, Publix store. So it was a 4,000 square foot house on 9 acres in a very good neighborhood. The neighborhood, she didn't have the neighborhood. The neighborhood across the street was a gated community. So in my head, I'm like, okay, this could work. And it's the street is all houses, like normal houses. It wasn't like huge parcels of 9-acre houses. This is like normal 50 by 100s or 60 by 120. And that means like, the frontage was 60 by 120. So that means when somebody says 60 by 120, that means the box. So 60 feet by 120 feet, right? So, or 50 by 100, that's the normal house in a subdivision. That's kind of what it looks like, give or take, right? And we come up to an agreement. We do a creative deal. I do it on a 2-page contract. All my contracts are 2 pages just because I believe in, my big thing is like, if I'm giving this deal to my mom, I always think about my mom. If I'm giving this deal to my mom, Nancy, right? Then she's got to be able to understand this. Like if my mom doesn't understand this, I don't want to do the deal, right? I'm not going to give you a 12-page or 13 or 15-page contract because right off the back, number one, you're going to say, hey, I got to see my attorney, right? And I would too. Nothing wrong with that. And number 3, it's confusing. It's just long. And there's a lot of words, right? At the end of the day, you want to know, like, what's the sales price? What's any kind of special terms that we need to know? Who's the title company? And when are we closing? And then is the proper information of who's buying it, who's selling it, everything else there. If 2 parties sign and agree on that, you are good to go. You have a legal binding contract. And just FYI too, because I did take law classes as well later on in life, that even if 2 parties verbally agree, you do have a legal binding contract. So just FYI, like when somebody, and there's case law on this as well. So the only class I actually like dug into in legal side was contract law. And I learned this in a sense of case law would say, oh, well, if you and if a neighbor and a lawn guy says, hey, we have an agreement, you're going to cut the grass, I'm going to pay you $20, and the lawn guy doesn't get paid, does he have an agreement or not? Well, yes, he does. There's a verbal agreement. So just, and that's real case law as well. You can look this up. Every state's a little bit different, but pretty much that stands. So anyway, now we have a signed agreement. Now, the funny part is how I knew this deal was going to work, too, when I met her mom. Her mom was an older lady. They're the original owners from 1963. So whenever you get a deal and you find somebody with the original owner, you normally can get a pretty good deal as long as they're not out of their mind, right? Some people are just out of there. I want $1 billion. They're like, what are you talking about? You have like a normal house. Like, what do you, you don't even, you're wasting my time here. Not everybody's like that. But for her, when I walked in and she introduced me to her mom, guess what her mom's name was? Nancy. It's the first time in my whole life that I've ever met a seller that her name was my mom's name. So right off the rip, I was like, something's going to be interesting. Now remember, fast forward, I'm going through a divorce. I'm separated. My mind is all over the place, and this comes up. Now, long story short, right after I get it on the contract, I don't even know what to do with it. What do I do? What do I do with this deal? I don't know. I think I could just sell it as a house, or I could probably do a community. Again, long story super short. I call up the only person I ever knew that actually has ever done a development deal in my whole life was Uncle Donnie. Uncle Donnie was Bridget's step uncle. And he was a ginormous developer here in Lakeland. He ran Tyler Homes, right? He did subdivisions, all kinds of things. So I call Uncle Donnie. I say, hey, Uncle Donnie, I got this deal. I don't know what to do with it. I've never done a development deal before. I think I may have something. Can we meet? He said, look, man, meet me at Marco's Pizza. Give me 2 Cokes. Give me 2 pizzas and a Coke, and we'll talk. I said, done, son. So I go over there. I meet him at Marco's Pizza, give him the two pizzas and a Coke, and he starts talking. I said, give me 1 second. Let me record this. I record it, and I start taking notes. He says, look, the first thing you got to do is you got to find a civil engineer, and then you got to get a topo boundary tree survey, and then you got to get a geotech. Right off I don't know what he's saying. This is like foreign language to me, especially when he says civil engineer. I'm thinking in my head, I got to hire an attorney. I don't know a civil engineer is a civil engineer, all right? And actually is somebody who specializes in helping you get a conceptual plan and an idea of what is possible. I didn't know these words. This is the first time I'm hearing these words in my life. Then he's like, look, you got to meet with Kimley and Horn. Kimley and Horn is a civil engineer company. They call it Kimley and Horn. If you meet with this company, they can help you through, right? So I meet with them. Immediately when I meet with Kimley and Horn, they say, look, I think you could do 25 houses. So I talked to Kimley and Horn. I said, that's amazing. Right out in my head, again, I'm thinking, I'm rich. Like, this is amazing. I've hit it. I'm going through a divorce. I don't have to pay for her nothing. Like, this is awesome. I'll take it. Let's go to the bank, right? And that's not true in development at all. So when it transferred to 25 houses, I said, look, do we know anybody that could purchase it? Now, mind me, Karen, at the same time, too, she gets wind that I can probably sell this as a subdivision. Now she says, hey, I want more money. So now she sends me a lawsuit, which I left this out on a case study recently, but then she sends me a lawsuit. Then I do have to hire an attorney, and then I have to come up with a win-win. I still sold it to her for the exact same price because I'm like, I have the contract, right? She forgot about this contract. I'm like, you signed the contract. What are you talking about? And I had what they call the power of attorney because she had the power of attorney over her mother because her mother was going through some dementia issues when I met Nancy. So long story short, be prepared. In development, stuff goes sideways. Yes, the numbers could look amazing, but just like any other deal, be prepared. Learn from every aspect that you possibly can learn from. So when I figured out about the 25 houses, Kimley and Horn, the representatives from Kimley and Horn, then she said, hey, why don't you talk to Marcus and Millichek or Cushman and Wakefield? These are 2 different companies in the commercial field. They may have some contacts that would be able to sell this to an acquisition manager. An acquisition manager is whenever you're selling something to a builder, a home builder, or a commercial builder or whatever, you're going to have to deal with an acquisition manager, just FYI. They all have acquisition managers. And then whenever you negotiate, you're dealing with attorneys. So that's just how they play when you're dealing with bigger numbers, okay? At least that's how it's been for me and my experience. So I chose, instead of Marcus and Millichek, I chose Cushman and Wakefield. Now, one thing I also learned too, whenever somebody is attempting to sell you on why they should represent you, you always want to go with the one with the shortest and to the point presentation. Here's why I say that. The one that actually knows how to market in a shorter time frame is an individual that I have learned that truly works with people that are taking action. Why? Because people that have a lot of revenue and a lot of money, their number one asset is time. So Cushman & Wakefield, 4 pages. Marcus and Millichek, 30 pages. Now, it was very detailed, but at the end of the day, to me, I'm like, I don't think they really do a lot of, and they do probably do a lot of transactions. But for me, it didn't fit. I chose Cushman & Wakefield. Immediately when I made that choice, I already had LOIs coming in. I had LOIs coming in very quickly. LOI is a letter of intent. And that was from D.R. Horton, Southern Homes, KB Homes, what was the other one? Southern Homes, Highland Homes, Heritage Homes. Everybody was sending me, and these LOIs were stupid. 2.2 million, 2 million, $58,000 a lot. It was just like, in my head, I'm like, I've never seen numbers like this before. I've always done houses, lower end houses as with that. And then they say, look, if you can transform it from 25 houses to more, then more people are going to bid on it, and they're really going to want this property even more. So we were able to convert it from 25 houses to 39. And if you look here, D.R. Horton's representative, I believe, even said, look, you can get more lots if instead of 2 entrances, you have 1 entrance and exit. You're going to have to make some adjustments, but if you do that, you'll have more of a circular complete. Then we did that. We had some wetlands on the top, but we made some adjustments, and then boom. We actually then converted from 39 to 41, and then we got it approved for 41 houses. Once that happened, I chose to go with KB Homes. Now, the reason why I chose KB Homes is because when you're doing commercial development, you want to ask yourself a couple questions. Number one, do they actually have money? Number two, do they have to go to the bank and get financing, or do they have money in the bank? KB Homes has money in the bank. So the minute that I meet their qualifications, that's the minute that we can close. Now, the other thing is, originally they sent me a $2.5 million contract. I chose to take the deal for 1.25. Now, why did I choose that? I go into depth in a case study with that, but I'll give you the short version of it. The 2.5 was I had to make it pad ready. The 1.25 was shovel ready. Pad ready means I had to put it in the roads. I had to put it in the lift station. A lift station is actually for utilities, right? I had to put it in the roads. I had to put it in the streets. I had to get all the work done. That would have took probably, I'd never done it before, so it probably could have took 18 months, right? More. And I don't know how to do this stuff. And I had to pay for it all. I had to front it, right? And I had to get the private money lender for it too, right? So I already thank God I had a great private money lender that took me up on this deal and the way I structured it for him on this deal, which I don't structure it this way anymore because I know what I'm doing. But in the beginning it was a 50-50 and I negotiated a developer fee. And it was it's like $50,000 developer fee, 2 payments of $100,000 total, I believe. And then 50-50 of the deal. That's how we did. And then he did a 5% pref. So that just means 5% interest on his money. No matter what, he's always going to get 5%. And then 50-50 on the deal, and I get a developer fee. And if you know what you're doing, developer fees are totally normal. It is what you're hiring a CEO for the project. You need them, period. So anyway, so on this, I said, nah, the 2.5 ain't going to work. So I had to set up a meeting at Columbia Restaurant, not the one in Tampa, the one in Orlando. And I set it up with Cushman & Wakefield and the representatives from KB Homes. Now, what I did, and I highly recommend, take notes on this. If you're going to have a high-level meeting, or if you want somebody to work with you on your team or something like that, especially super high level, find out, do a little bit of research on them, and buy them a gift. I bought Paul a sound speaker that he went to FSU, so it was a FSU branded sound speaker for his golf clubs. I found out he played golf. And the engineer that came, I bought him a 1700 Compass that I found on Amazon. It was a replica, right? But it looked cool as hell to me. It looked super cool. And so at the meeting, I gave the gifts. So right off the bat, what happens? There's openness. There's like, oh, this is really cool. I learned that when I was in the military too, when I started meeting princes and whatnot. So when I had the conversation, Paul, the acquisition manager, did not want to share with me. I said, look, do you guys want this deal or not? That's another thing that you could ask when you're negotiating. Do you want this or not? Yes or no? If they don't, then we don't need to really further the conversation. I'm not here to convince you of this deal, right? He said, yes, we do want the deal. I said, perfect. So look, the 2.5 with shovel ready is not going to work, man. I don't know what I'm doing. I want to do a net deal. Okay, just net. When we finish the approvals and entitlements, that means basically getting it shovel ready, doing all the paperwork to get it shovel ready, go through the entire process of rezoning. When we have it shovel ready, that means I get it to the point all the paperwork is done that now you can put a shovel in the ground, or some people call it engineered lots. I think shovel ready is way more appropriate. Then we close. Then we'll close in 30 days or less, right? So my big thing now is we've got to come up with a number that makes sense. Paul didn't want to give me the number. The engineer accidentally did. So I asked the engineer who was there. I said, look, on the last deal that you guys did, what was your final number on that shovel ready status? Like, what did that look like? He said, I think it was like 33,000 a lot. And I was like, ooh, good. Paul looked at him sideways and I already knew for a fact that he wasn't supposed to say that number. So I did the calculations in my head. I'm like, all right, so if we do 30, we got 41 lots at 30 something and change. I was thinking it was like 30,500. That comes out to about 1.25 million net. But I want it net, meaning I'm not paying closing costs. I'm not paying nothing. I know, and I do, again, I've done this before on the houses. Remember, I had over 60 transactions face to face in one calendar year. So I was extremely experienced in negotiations, and they were not. Even though they were KB homes. Remember, big development deals, you may do 1 or 2 a year. You're never going to have a ton of reps. You just don't have a lot of reps on negotiations. That's why I still love doing houses. It gets me doing a lot of reps, and it gets my name out there that people start referring me business on the commercial side. Actually, all of my commercial business, all my development deals, everything I've done, business parks, development, all of these things have came from my house deals that somebody referred me to land. Just FYI. Hopefully this is helping somebody. If you're getting a lot out of it, great. Leave a comment, leave whatever you want. Totally cool. Going back into it, Paul said, okay, yeah, we could do that deal. And I said, instead of the 32,000, why don't we do 30,500? So I lowered it so I can get an immediate yes. And when that transpired, that's exactly what we did. We locked up the deal, got it under contract, and then probably about a little bit over 6 months later, we finished all the approvals and entitlements, and we closed the deal. And we got a check for $1.25 million. It was an amazing deal. This is actually the actual PSA that was signed, and it was big negotiations as well. Sold it. First property, when I went to the home when they were doing the property, I found out that they named the street after my family, and it was called Cruz Court. The first house was 7187 Cruz Court. This was the first one. And it was an amazing experience.